Did you know that over 70% of all executive leadership roles are found through networking? But it begs the question, what is networking? What is a network? How do I build one if I don't even have one? But more importantly, how do I make it even actionable so that it can help make a difference for me? If that's of interest to you, jump on board. We're going to cover that right now. Welcome to the Dream Job America podcast. I'm your host, Tim Tannella, and we're going to talk about all things hiring, but specifically strategies, tools, and tactics for helping you find your next dream job. Now, before we get started, I'm going to ask you to click on the subscribe button because the more views, the more people subscribe to this station, the greater the ability I have to continue making great content, hopefully to help you find your next great opportunity in a fraction of the time. And if you stick with me through this relatively short video, we're going to have a little surprise at the end, something free that's going to really help jumpstart your move in looking or thinking about making a job or career transition. So today we're going to talk about networking. The stats that are kind of across the industry based on studies have been done have shown that about 50% or more of all the great executive roles out there are never made public. They're either inside deals, as we talked about before, in what we call the unpublished or hidden marketplace, where retained executive recruiters are conducting confidential searches, or the searches are being conducted in semi-confidence by the companies themselves. And being able to find those opportunities is really half the battle. And the other stats show you that over 70% of those roles are filled ultimately through what we call networking. And this begs the question of what is networking? It's this kind of amorphous word that people use, my network. And when people talk about their network, sometimes it's very specific to business. Maybe they've been involved in a certain type of role for 20 years. They know people in those positions, or they've been in a particular vertical for a while and they know other people in those industries. Or sometimes it's just whatever people that they've worked with in the past in any capacity, whether it's family members, their training partner and a personal gym coach in their health club, everybody they've worked with in the past, their bosses, essentially people they had a good relationship with, and they refer to this as their network. Now, I'm going to have a separate video, almost a workshop, where we're going to talk about specifically how you build a real network and make it actionable. But for the purpose of this video today, I just want you to start thinking about what your network really is, what the value is, and how I need to actually turn that into something that's actionable so that the network will work for me. So when I talk to most candidates, they're looking for something new. Most leaders, what they'll do is they'll look for people that they've worked with in the past where they had a really good relationship, a good experience. Could be employees, coworkers, folks in the industry, the former bosses, and so forth. And they'll get together with them and say, it's been a while, let's exchange notes, have a coffee, have a Zoom call. And they'll mention to them they're looking for something new, and they'll ask, if you hear of anything in the industry that's of interest, would you please let me know, make an introduction, or have me be part of the conversation? And that's kind of where the networking stops. And then, of course, they don't know what to do afterwards, because if somebody doesn't call you back, it's somewhat implicit that they didn't hear of an opportunity. And most people don't call them back again and say, hey, did you hear of anything through the grapevine after our last conversation? They may do that with a friend or two, but usually they feel it's somewhat invasive, and there probably wasn't an opportunity there in the first place, and it ends. It's kind of like sending one email touch point out, boom, nothing happens, and you never get in touch again. This is kind of what I observe for the most part. People look at their network as, and the power of that network being those connections. And what I'd like people to think about today, that the power of your network really isn't the people that you know, it's the people that they know. And the goal when you network to sit down in advance, having done research and built a target list of people that you want to meet, that you think are players in the space that you want to be in, or who are able to connect you with decision makers who hire for the types of roles that you're looking to participate in. It's a fundamentally different situation. I feel like whenever you reach out to somebody in your network, it should never be open-ended, But before you ever sit down with them, you should have already identified a target group of people that you want them to take action on for you. And so there's a very big difference when you do it that way versus just leaving it open-ended and hoping that they get back to you. In other words, you're not looking for them to come up with something for you. You are directing them to make specific introductions to a target audience that you've presented to them directly. So you've said, hey, I'm looking to get a role in the software as a service space, B2B in this particular vertical. Before you walk in that door, you've already outlined 10 players in that industry that you want to meet. And then when you meet with that contact, hopefully you've done some research and you have a good feeling that they probably know a handful of those people. When you sit down and have that conversation, you're going to direct and say, listen, I can really help these companies. These are the kind of people I'm trying to meet, these 10 individuals. Do you know them? And would you personally write an email for me making an introduction? And if they're uncomfortable doing that because maybe they don't know them tremendously well, then you can ask permission. Hey, do you mind if I reach out to them? Say that you and I had a conversation since you do know them, and go that route. But either way, the purpose is get through that initial firewall using them to take action. It's a very different approach from just going out there generally. You're looking at them as your sales or marketing force, and that makes it very, very different proposition. So you may be asking yourself, okay, well, that's really great if I've been around the block for a long time and I know a lot of people that are in that industry, and I can go out and make those contacts. But what if I don't really have a big network? Great for you, Tim. I mean, you've got 80,000 people in your database and 20,000 people connected to you and all these different clients. But I'm in a role where I don't really have those types of numbers. Maybe I've got 1,000 people on LinkedIn and I connected to them randomly, and I've worked for maybe 2 or 3 companies over the years. What can I really do? Well, you can do the exact same thing. What you end up doing is you sit and you don't need a giant group of people. You just sit down and say, okay, who are the top 20 people that I know and have worked with that are in the space I'm trying to target, that would maybe know some players in that space, and I'm just going to go after those 20. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come to each one of those with a list of 20 people that I know, that maybe you know, that I'm looking to reach, and I'm going to ask them to make an introduction for you. Now, insurance agents are incredible at doing this. I've known some terrific ones in the space, and the rule of thumb was always never leave a meeting without 4 or 5 referrals, or else you're left empty-handed. Now, the difference between this and that is you're not just generically saying, hey, provide me some open-ended referrals. You're coming into it already with that roadmap designed, that research plan already developed, and then you're just asking them to execute on that for you. Now, of course, this begs the question of how one should build a network in the first place, because I don't think most people intelligently build a network, or they build it, another way of phrasing it is, with a design in mind from the outset. I think people kind of pick up relationships as they move through their life, and they consider that that's their network. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural thing that we all do. The only problem is when you're looking for a new job, everything has to be highly targeted and everything has to be in tight alignment. So as you work through your career, building a network shouldn't be something that kind of accidentally happens as you go along your road every day, but it should be something that you have a strategy for from the very beginning, and so that you can build that, so that when you do need to activate that network, it's very, very focused and ready to go. So, for example, we talk about LinkedIn. Now, one of the things that you can do on LinkedIn is you can just accept invitations from every single person that connects with you and figure, hey, I'm building a big network. I got the more numbers, the better. Or you could actively reach out to connect with people that are going to be in a specific ecosystem that you're going to need down the road as your career path moves forward. And you could do that through a direct outreach yourself, or accepting invitations from just those folks. Now, the benefit of doing that is that then if you want to start to develop a content plan, which we've talked about in other videos, whether you're doing social media postings, direct emailing, direct LinkedIn email campaigning, whatever channels you're using to get that message out about who you are, where you stand in your space, what makes you unique and different as an individual, what makes you a top performer, that content is being seen and directed primarily at the target group that you're looking to build. And so you're going to be able to craft that content directly around that network that you're creating. And you can do that very specifically. You can do the same thing by building an email database and just having a private email list just around those types of folks. Most people don't do this. They just kind of collect it as they go along, and then they look later on to see who is in those spaces that you've built relationships with. But you can do that by design from the very beginning. Another thing that you can do is if you are in a certain space, you can start an email group. You can start a Facebook group. You can start an organization where you just share information of like-minded individuals in the same space. And you can just do this and reach out to people. And you'd be surprised at how many people would say, hey, yeah, I'd love to be part of your group. And even if you pitch it like it's a private network, so in the event anybody needs to share information, or maybe, God forbid, you lose your job one day and you want to look for other opportunities, we've got that closely held network. I think if you do that with a lot of people, you're going to see that a large percentage of the people would love to do that. And in this process, you begin to build a very tight network of people that are in alignment with either what you do, in terms of your functional role, the industry that you're in, or the industries that you want to go towards. Then when you try to activate that network, the people that they know will be even deeper in a similar space. So you can do this by design. It's a lot easier to do, obviously, as you go along before you are looking for something new. But most people don't do it. And I can tell you right now, you're guaranteed to change jobs multiple times. It's very rare that somebody starts a company and does it till they're 60 years old, or joins a company and stays there until retirement these days. Usually you're going to have multiple opportunities that you're going to either move on your own because you think it's a better opportunity, or you're going to have an exit for your company, good or bad. There's going to be a layoff. Whatever's going to happen, you're going to go through many iterations. I think the stat today is something like people that have at least 5 significant roles over the course of their career. Some of those numbers are much, much larger than I've seen people that are changing jobs every 2 years. So one thing's for sure, change is inevitable, particularly in today's times, and you want to be building that network, knowing that you're going to have to make a change so that you can activate it and get something new very, very quickly that's connected to the decision makers that you're going to want to work with in the future. And the last idea I want to throw out for the purpose of today's video is this idea that a network is not a single transaction or a A-B point interaction. I meet you, I talk to you, I hook up with you 3 years later. It is kind of like a drip sales process. If you're doing this by design to build these relationships and build that network for when you need it, you kind of do have to set it up like a sales process, but it's not a big deal. Let's say you identify players, you connect on LinkedIn, you get their email addresses, you set them up in a spreadsheet or CRM or whatever system that you're using, and you just have a drip campaign where every month you're going to go ahead and send them something that's interesting about the industry, and maybe something that you hear from somebody else. You just repurpose and send it out, and maybe a cool video you saw on YouTube that you send out to them. It's something you could whip out on ChatGPT pretty quickly. It doesn't really matter, but you're trying to stay basically in their frame of mind in sending them something every month so they know of you, they remember you, and they feel like they have an active relationship with you. And of course, you can expand that out in a higher touch environment where you can get together physically. You can have a coffee meetings. You can bring a special guest. There's all kinds of little tactics that you can use to kind of build the strength of that network. But the point we're trying to leave here is you have to think about building something by design. You have to take action to build that. And then you have to make it an ongoing process, which is really easy today. I mean, you could generate in an hour off of ChatGPT and YouTube, you could do 6 months worth of emails, and you could set that up in an email sequence online, usually through your CRM or another service. And you could do that in an afternoon. And then for the next 6 months, you're kind of connecting all the time with the folks in your network, and they know who you are, because you're never going to know when you're going to have to tap that network, when that need's going to happen. Usually when you are in transition, it happens at a time when you really weren't experiencing it, or you weren't doing it by intent, or you were forced to be in that position. So again, the idea is this is something that you have to actively do. The goal here is to build this network so that when you need to really find something new, you're going to go to that network with a list of people that you really want to meet that they know. And because they have that relationship with you, then you can target those folks and ask them to take specific action for you and make those introductions. And now you have created a force multiplier with your existing network that stems out through several iterations. It can really make a big impact when you need it the most. So if you like the content of this video today, I'd ask you to please hit the like button, but most importantly, hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers I get, it really does make a difference. It's a simple click of a button for you, but it can change the number of views we get significantly and can allow me to continue to make great content that hopefully will help you, your friends, your family, and those that you love help find that next great opportunity in a fraction of the time, hopefully avoid a lot of the pain, frustration, and angst that comes along with that process. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. And as I mentioned earlier, because you did stay through this video, I wanted to give you an offer today that's completely free. It's my 4-step job preparation guide, which lays the foundation for everything that you need to know to create a strategy and an execution plan to find that next great opportunity and hopefully to fish in the waters where there's higher paying jobs most of the public doesn't know about and there's less competition for it. Again, you can get that completely free of charge on my website, Dream Job America, at www.america/guide. And that's it for today. If there's anything you want to see me make in the future, if you're struggling with an issue, if there's a hurdle you're trying to get over, if there's just something of general interest you want to learn, you want to pick my brain about it, please let me know in the comments and I'll go ahead and make a video about it. Or if you have any personal opinion, if you think what you saw here is really great, if you think it's not so great, all feedback is constructive and good. It's going to help me to redirect the types of videos I make and hopefully improve over time. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining and we hope to see you in the future.